So why did Scott Walker's campaign flame out so spectacularly? Well, one of his former aides who worked for him on his campaign has a few possible explanations that she expressed on Twitter. This is Liz Mair, and understand she was hired by him and fired the next day. So she has a bit of a bone to pick with him. But here is her understanding of why he perhaps failed. Walker did a number of things wrong in this race. This is the beginning of what will be a lengthy list, which is true. We're not even going to show you all of the tweets. Things he got wrong: misunderstanding the GOP base, its priorities and stances, pandering, flip-flopping, allowing certain staff, to marginalize and cut off people in Walker's orbit who had got him to the governorship and kept him there, becoming so invested in winning no matter what it took that he lost sight of his real identity as a political leader, hiring people who spent a lot to build out a massive operation that would not be sustainable unless the financing remained amazing forever, not training himself out of tics, including instinctively answering yes and absolutely to things, comparing lots of things to union fight, which is 100% true. And then finally, I said at the time to people who wrote that Walker would lose because he fired me that was bullshit and silly. But I also feared that the reasons behind his firing of me would be the ultimate cause of his demise. Now that appears to be true. I think she might be overthinking it a little bit, but certainly some of that is true. And despite the fact that he does seem to have left because the orders came from on high, from Wall Street and other associated places of big money, they probably wouldn't have given him that order if he hadn't dropped down from in the teens to zero, and he wouldn't have dropped down if not perhaps for some of the things that she's listing here.
Okay, now, having said that, I think she is mostly full of shit.
Mostly bitter?
Yeah, and so no, let me explain. No, it's not even the bitterness so much. So she was on the campaign for a day, so let's not overstate her importance. The reason why everybody's covering this story is because political reporters find it an easy story to cover, okay? It's about technical issues, campaign infighting, doesn't involve any policy. Policy's dangerous. Then you get, if you have actual analysis of policy, what will be the budget ramifications? You talk about numbers. They say, oh, you're biased, right? But if you talk about internal infighting, yeah, that's great. Nobody's going to accuse you of bias. It's Republican on Republican crime. It's easy and safe to cover. So that's why this is getting a lot of attention, even though she was a staffer for one day.
Yeah.
Then number two, some of what she says is true. Yeah, he over talks about the unions. He probably got a lot of fancy consultants from that were forced upon him by the donors and that were too expensive. Sure. But overall, she's wrong, okay? Because she thinks, oh, he did this wrong or he did that wrong. And if he hadn't flip-flopped and pandered and no, that's his job, okay? The donors pay him to pander to them, okay? And he panders to the base. And in order to do that, he is wildly hypocritical. He's a flip-flopper. He always has been. He doesn't have any principles.
Yeah.
So your analysis that if he had just stuck to his principles, he would have won is laughable. He never had any principles in the first place. His only principles is, yes, Koch brothers, yes, sir. How can I help you, sir? And you worked for him when you were excited about that opportunity and you're excited about that possibility. You know better. You know, if he'd run the campaign exactly as you want him to, he still would have gotten slaughtered. In fact, he wouldn't have gotten as much donor money. He might not have been in the race in the first place.
Yeah. It is amazing. This is sort of a side note, but there's a lot that I don't understand about the financing of campaigns, but the fact that he raised tens of millions of dollars, and they're talking about his campaign infrastructure was unsustainable in the long run. It's been like 3 months. How could they not pay? How much do these advisors cost that the tens of millions of dollars didn't sustain them? Maybe it's not that they don't need to raise more money. They need to spend more efficiently, I think. But I do think, look, I think that there's a little bit of bitterness, a little bit of misunderstanding of the causes of his downfall. But it is interesting that somebody who I believe was interested in him potentially winning. This is not someone who is like a Trump supporter through and through. Like, if you're saying that all of her assumptions about why he lost is wrong, it's interesting that somebody who is so inherently invested in him winning could get it wrong in that way, in the way that people who you normally would consider outsiders would also get it wrong.
Yeah, and look, I mean, she's got a way overinflated sense of Scott Walker.
And her own importance, clearly.
Yeah, like that he could have been a great leader. No. He showed exactly what kind of leader he was. He leads from behind, from the Koch brothers behind. Okay. So, and she also has an overinflated sense of her own importance. So she says, you know, a lot of people who said that when he fired me that he would lose because of that.
I don't think anyone said that.
Who said that? Like, your mom said that? Who said that? I don't remember you being fired, let alone anybody saying like, oh my God, did you see Scott fire Walker fired Liz Mair, and that very important staffer that was on there for one day. He'll lose because of that. Nobody said that. Come on.
Yeah, that's probably true. Anyway, I mean, we've covered the two debates, and of the various candidates who almost certainly weren't going to win, I kind of liked that. I get what you're saying about him not having any principles and him being willing to bow down to the big money. I think that that is true, but I do think that he at least had a stance. He hates unions. That's something that a conservative activist can sort of get behind, and it's more than a lot of the candidates have. And it makes me think about, and for some reason this doesn't seem to be on the minds of many primary voters, it makes me think about what it is that drives a person to get involved. Like on the left, you have Bernie Sanders, who seems to genuinely care about these issues and has for decades. You have Larry Lessig, who's running for this one issue. You have Hillary Clinton, who is addicted to power, basically. And then, like, on the other side, you have just a combination of people who see it as a reality show. And then Scott Walker, like, what is he getting into the White House for? To bust up a few federal workers' unions? Like, it's difficult to imagine what is actually driving them. Carly Fiorina apparently wants to start wars with various places. That's the best place to do it, is from the White House. I get why she's running. But there are some people that I just don't understand, and I don't see how you can get people to rally behind them when it's... I think this is one of the problems that Jeb Bush is having, is I don't think anybody can come up with an explanation for why he wants to be president other than that it's expected of him as a Bush. And that doesn't rally people to your cause. Like, generating feelings of indignation and fear and suspicion around the world like Trump is doing, that can cause people to back you.
John, you're overthinking it. I mean, they're all running for ego. There's only three people have
But if there's people on the left, if there's people like Bernie Sanders and there's people like Larry Lessig, like, I don't think that Rand Paul just so loves power. He does like power, but he has an ideology that he seems to genuinely believe. But that's distinct.
I know, but if you let me finish the sentence, I was going to say, that's okay. I was going to say there's three people that you can make a case for, and that's the two you've been mentioning, Sanders and Lessig. Sanders has been for those same positions all along. It's not like he's doing it on an ego trip. He's been doing the same thing when it wasn't going to serve his ego at all, right? When he was the least powerful person in the Senate. Lessig clearly not doing it on an ego trip, doing it on it's not like he thinks there's a great chance he's going to win, right? He's doing it because he deeply, deeply cares about that issue. Now, Rand Paul, he could be doing it for the ego, yada, yada, but he at least has a solid, real position that is different from other people's positions. So that's fair enough to say at least you know what you're getting with Rand Paul, and that's a clear ideology.
Yeah, and Cruz and Santorum and Huckabee want to set up an American theocracy. That's something I can understand.